Most people think disrespect hurts because of what was said. It does not. It hurts because of what it triggers inside you. The moment someone talks down to you, ignores you, mocks you, or dismisses you, something automatic happens. Your body tightens. Your thoughts accelerate. Your heart rate shifts. You feel an urge to defend, to explain, to attack, or to prove yourself. And in that moment, something far more important than your feelings is at stake. Control. Disrespect is not dangerous because of words. It is dangerous because of reaction. The second you react emotionally, you hand over power. Not symbolically. Literally. The person who controls your emotional state controls the interaction. Most people lose respect not when they are insulted, but when they respond impulsively. Anger, over-explaining, defensive energy, nervous laughter, all of these signals communicate the same message: you got to me. And when someone knows they got to you, the power dynamic shifts. Calm is not silence. Calm is not weakness. Calm is controlled presence. It is the ability to remain internally stable when external pressure increases. If you cannot stay calm when disrespected, you are emotionally dependent on other people's behavior. And emotional dependence is the root of social weakness. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. Disrespect hurts because it attacks identity. When someone disrespects you, it threatens how you see yourself. If you believe you are competent and someone calls you incompetent, your brain experiences a conflict. That conflict feels like danger. Your nervous system does not distinguish between social threat and physical threat very well. Social rejection, humiliation, dismissal, these activate the same survival circuits designed to protect you from physical harm. This is why you feel heat in your body. This is why your mind races. This is why you feel the urge to react instantly. Your brain is trying to restore status. Status is deeply wired into human psychology. Throughout history, status determined survival. Lower status meant fewer resources, less protection, and reduced mating opportunities. So when someone disrespects you, your primitive brain interprets it as a threat to position. And your instinct says, respond immediately. But instinct is not strategy. Emotional reaction feels powerful in the moment. It gives you a temporary illusion of control. You speak louder. You argue harder. You try to dominate the conversation. Yet almost always, reactive behavior lowers perceived status. Why? Because high-status individuals do not appear emotionally destabilized by minor provocations. They appear measured, selective, controlled. When you overreact, you signal that the other person's words penetrated your internal stability. And people unconsciously register that. Calm, on the other hand, creates uncertainty. When you do not react, the other person cannot measure your emotional state. They cannot confirm whether they affected you. That uncertainty shifts pressure back onto them. Silence can feel uncomfortable at first. Especially if you are used to defending yourself quickly. But silence is not passive. It is observational power. When someone disrespects you and you remain composed, you are communicating something very specific: your behavior does not control my internal state. That message is subtle. But it is powerful. Most people make a critical mistake at this point. They believe staying calm means suppressing emotion. It does not. Suppression creates internal pressure. It leaks later through resentment, passive aggression, or sudden explosions. True calm is not suppression. It is regulation. Regulation means you notice the emotional spike without obeying it. There is a gap between stimulus and response. In that gap lies your authority. When someone disrespects you, the first battle is internal, not external. If you win internally, the external situation becomes manageable. So the real question is not, how do I stop people from disrespecting me? The real question is, how do I stop giving my nervous system to other people? Because once you master that, disrespect loses its leverage. Think carefully about this. Have you ever seen someone remain completely calm while being challenged? There is something intimidating about it. Not aggressive. Not loud. Just steady. That steadiness forces the other person to confront their own behavior. Emotional people seek reaction. They feed off visible impact. When you deny them visible impact, you disrupt the reward cycle. And here is something even more important. When you react emotionally, you train people how to treat you. If someone teases you and you explode, they learn that teasing controls you. If someone dismisses you and you over-explain, they learn that dismissal triggers you. Behavior that produces results gets repeated. So if disrespect consistently produces an emotional response from you, it will continue. But if disrespect produces calm evaluation instead of reaction, the dynamic changes. Calm does not mean you tolerate everything. It means you choose your response strategically instead of impulsively. There is a difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is immediate and emotional. Response is delayed and intentional. Reaction is ego protection. Response is status management. When someone disrespects you, you have three options. React emotionally and lose leverage. Suppress emotion and build internal resentment. Or regulate emotion and respond strategically. Only the third option builds long-term authority. You must understand something fundamental. Respect is not demanded in moments of emotional chaos. It is established through consistent emotional stability. If your mood shifts with every external comment, you appear unstable. And instability lowers perceived power. Calm people are predictable in their reactions. They do not swing wildly. That predictability signals maturity and internal control. Internal control is attractive. Not just socially, but psychologically. Because control implies self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency implies strength. From this point forward, shift your focus. Do not ask, how do I shut them down? Ask, how do I remain centered regardless of their behavior? That shift alone changes everything. Because when your goal becomes internal stability instead of external domination, your energy changes. Your posture changes. Your tone changes. And people feel that. You do not need to announce control. You embody it. Disrespect tests your emotional discipline. It exposes whether your self-worth depends on validation. If your identity collapses when someone challenges it, then your identity was fragile. But if your identity remains intact under pressure, then you possess something rare. Emotional sovereignty. And sovereignty cannot be granted by others. It is developed internally. In the next phase, we will break down exactly how your brain processes disrespect, why certain personalities trigger you more than others, and how to build a nervous system that remains steady under social attack. Because once you understand the mechanics, calm stops being a personality trait. It becomes a trained ability. To stay calm when people disrespect you, you must first understand what actually happens inside your mind during those moments. Without that understanding, you will keep fighting symptoms instead of mastering the system. When someone disrespects you, the first structure that activates is not your rational mind. It is your emotional brain. Specifically, the part responsible for detecting threat. This system evolved to protect you from physical danger. But in modern life, it reacts just as strongly to social danger. A sarcastic comment. A dismissive tone. A public correction. An eye roll. Your brain reads these as signals of lowered status. And status, to the primitive brain, equals safety. The moment your status feels attacked, your nervous system prepares for confrontation. Muscles tighten. Breathing becomes shallow. Thoughts accelerate. You begin mentally drafting arguments before the other person has even finished speaking. This is not weakness. It is wiring. But wiring is not destiny. The problem is not that your brain reacts. The problem is that most people obey the reaction without evaluation. Here is where most people make a mistake. They assume the intensity of their emotional response reflects the seriousness of the situation. If they feel intense anger, they believe the disrespect must be severe. But intensity does not equal importance. It often equals insecurity. Disrespect triggers strongest in areas where you already doubt yourself. If someone calls you lazy and you secretly fear you lack discipline, the reaction will be stronger. If someone questions your intelligence and you are already uncertain about your competence, your system will spike harder. The insult does not create the insecurity. It exposes it. This is why two people can receive the same comment and react completely differently. One shrugs it off. The other explodes. The difference is not toughness. It is internal certainty. When your self-concept is stable, external comments bounce. When your self-concept is fragile, external comments penetrate. So the first layer of calm is self-awareness. Instead of asking, "How dare they say that?" ask, "Why did that hit me so strongly?" That question shifts you from reaction to investigation. Investigation restores control. There is another layer most people overlook. Not all disrespect is about you. Sometimes it is projection. Sometimes it is insecurity from the other person. Sometimes it is dominance testing. And sometimes it is simple emotional immaturity. But when you react impulsively, you collapse all possibilities into one interpretation: attack. And when you interpret everything as attack, you respond with defense. Defense mode narrows perception. You stop observing the other person's psychology. You stop analyzing context. You focus only on protecting ego. Calm expands perception. When you remain steady, you can evaluate the situation with clarity. Is this person trying to provoke me? Are they seeking attention? Are they insecure? Are they attempting to establish dominance? Are they unaware of their tone? Each of these scenarios requires a different response. But you can only choose correctly if you are not overwhelmed emotionally. Think about high-level negotiators, leaders, or individuals with natural authority. They do not rush to defend themselves at every slight. They gather information first. Calm buys time. Time allows assessment. Assessment enables strategy. Without time, you default to instinct. Instinct is fast but not always intelligent. Now consider status dynamics more deeply. In many social interactions, people subconsciously test boundaries. They push slightly to see how much space they can take. A joke at your expense. A dismissive interruption. A subtle undermining comment. If you react explosively, you may temporarily intimidate them, but you also reveal sensitivity. That sensitivity becomes leverage. If you react nervously, you signal insecurity. But if you respond calmly, directly, and without emotional charge, you communicate something powerful: I see what you are doing. And I am not destabilized. That message resets the dynamic. The goal is not to dominate every interaction. The goal is to maintain internal authority regardless of external behavior. Internal authority means your emotional state is self-regulated. It does not swing wildly based on other people's moods. This is rare. And rarity creates respect. Let us examine something uncomfortable. Sometimes people disrespect you because your boundaries are unclear. Calm does not mean passive tolerance. It means controlled enforcement. There is a difference between emotional explosion and firm correction. Emotional explosion says, "You hurt me." Firm correction says, "That behavior is not acceptable." Notice the difference. One is about your wounded ego. The other is about standards. Standards are stable. Ego is reactive. When you build a reputation for calm but firm boundaries, people adjust. Not because you shout, but because you are consistent. Consistency builds authority more effectively than aggression. Another critical element is detachment from immediate validation. If you require everyone in the room to approve of you, disrespect will devastate you. But if you are comfortable being misunderstood occasionally, you become harder to manipulate. The more you seek approval, the more vulnerable you are to disrespect. Because disrespect threatens approval. But when your sense of worth is internally generated, external approval becomes optional. And optional things cannot control you. This does not mean you stop caring about relationships. It means you stop outsourcing your identity. Calm is easier when your identity is self-defined. There is also a timing principle. You do not always need to respond immediately. In fact, delayed response often increases impact. When you pause, maintain eye contact, and speak slowly instead of reacting instantly, you create psychological weight. Your words feel deliberate rather than defensive. Speed communicates emotion. Slowness communicates control. Even your breathing affects perception. Shallow, rapid breathing signals agitation. Slow, steady breathing stabilizes your nervous system and subtly signals composure to others. Your physiology shapes your psychology. Control the body, and the mind follows. Now consider this carefully. Every time you stay calm during disrespect, you strengthen a neural pathway. You teach your brain that social threat does not equal danger. Over time, the emotional spike reduces. Calm becomes automatic. But in the beginning, it requires deliberate effort. You must consciously override instinct. And this is where discipline enters the equation. Staying calm is not about personality. It is about training. Just like physical strength requires repeated resistance, emotional strength requires repeated exposure to discomfort without reaction. The first few times you remain composed while disrespected, it will feel unnatural. Your mind will scream to defend. Your ego will demand retaliation. But if you hold steady, something shifts. You begin to experience a new kind of power. The power of non-reactivity. Non-reactivity is not weakness. It is selective engagement. You choose when to invest energy. You choose when to correct behavior. You choose when to ignore. Choice is power. When you feel you must react, you are not choosing. You are compelled. Compulsion is loss of control. And control is the foundation of respect. In the next section, we will move from understanding to execution. You will learn a practical internal framework you can apply in real time when someone challenges, dismisses, or disrespects you. Because awareness without method is incomplete. Calm must become procedural. Understanding the psychology of disrespect gives you clarity. But clarity alone will not protect you in the moment. When someone challenges you publicly, dismisses your opinion, or attempts to undermine you, your body will still feel the surge. Your mind will still move quickly. So now we move from theory to method. You need a framework. Not something abstract. Something you can apply in real time. The first step happens internally and it happens immediately. Pause. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. Just a brief internal halt. When disrespect occurs, your brain wants speed. Speed is instinct. Speed is emotional. You must interrupt that impulse. Even a 2-second pause changes the chemistry of the moment. It allows your rational mind to re-enter the conversation. It creates separation between stimulus and response. During that pause, you shift from, "How do I defend myself?" to, "What is actually happening here?" That single question reclaims authority. Now here is the second step. Regulate the body. Slow your breathing slightly. Relax your jaw. Lower your shoulders. These are small adjustments, but they signal to your nervous system that there is no physical threat. The body listens to posture. If you remain physically composed, the emotional intensity reduces faster. This is not about pretending to be calm. It is about engineering calm. Remember this principle: the body leads the mind more often than the mind leads the body. If you keep your breathing slow and your tone steady, your thoughts stabilize. If your breathing becomes sharp and your posture tightens, your thoughts escalate. Control physiology. Control reaction. The third step is evaluation. Not all disrespect requires confrontation. Ask yourself silently, is this ignorance, insecurity, dominance testing, or genuine malice? Ignorance may require correction. Insecurity may require indifference. Dominance testing may require calm boundary reinforcement. Malice may require distance. When you react without evaluation, you respond incorrectly. And incorrect responses damage reputation. Now we move to boundaries. Many people confuse calm with passivity. They believe that staying calm means accepting mistreatment. That is false. Calm is the foundation of effective boundary setting. If someone crosses a line, address it without emotional charge. For example, instead of raising your voice and saying, "Why are you talking to me like that?" you say calmly, "I don't appreciate that tone." Notice the difference. One seeks validation. The other sets a standard. Standards are powerful because they are not emotional. They are firm and clear. When you speak slowly and directly, without visible agitation, your words carry more weight. People are more likely to adjust when they sense composure rather than volatility. Now here is where most people struggle. They fear that if they do not react strongly, others will think they are weak. But strength is not volume. Strength is control. Think about the most intimidating individuals you have encountered. They rarely shout. They rarely over-explain. They speak minimally and deliberately. Restraint signals confidence. Overreaction signals insecurity. This does not mean you never raise your voice. It means you do not allow others to dictate when you do. Control means you decide the intensity of your response. Another important principle is selective engagement. Not every insult deserves your attention. If someone attempts to provoke you for entertainment or attention, calm indifference often neutralizes them faster than confrontation. Attention is reward. When you withdraw emotional attention, you remove reinforcement. However, if disrespect becomes consistent and intentional, indifference is not enough. Then you escalate strategically, not emotionally. Strategic escalation means you address the pattern, not just the single incident. For example, instead of reacting every time someone interrupts you, you calmly say at the right moment, "I notice I get interrupted often. I would like to finish my thoughts." You are not attacking. You are highlighting behavior. Highlighting behavior forces accountability. Emotional attack triggers defense. Calm observation triggers awareness. Now let us go deeper. There is an identity shift required for lasting calm. If you see yourself as someone who must prove worth constantly, disrespect will always destabilize you. But if you see yourself as someone whose value is internally validated, external comments lose force. Identity determines reaction. So begin reinforcing a new internal statement. I do not react impulsively. I assess. I choose. I respond. This is not affirmation for motivation. It is instruction for behavior. Each time you remain composed under pressure, you confirm this identity. Over time, the identity strengthens. You begin to notice something interesting. People start treating you differently. Not because you demanded respect, but because you stopped broadcasting emotional vulnerability. Humans instinctively test emotional stability. When they encounter resistance through calm composure, they recalibrate. There is also a social mirror effect. When you remain calm, you force the other person to confront their own emotional intensity. If they are agitated and you are not, the contrast becomes visible. Often, they will lower their tone unconsciously to match yours. Calm spreads. But it only spreads when it is authentic. If inside you are boiling, but outside you are pretending, the tension leaks through micro-expressions and tone shifts. True calm comes from internal discipline, not performance. This is why repetition matters. You will not master this overnight. There will be moments where you react and regret it. That is part of training. The goal is progress, not perfection. Each encounter becomes practice. Each practice strengthens regulation. And slowly, something shifts in your internal landscape. You stop fearing confrontation. You stop anticipating disrespect. You stop mentally rehearsing defensive arguments. Because you trust your composure. And when you trust your composure, you become difficult to destabilize. Disrespect loses its sting. Not because people stop behaving poorly, but because you stop allowing their behavior to define your state. You understand something deeper. Other people's actions reveal their character. Your response reveals yours. And character built on emotional stability commands long-term respect. In the next phase, we will examine advanced strategies for high-pressure environments, public settings, workplace dynamics, and situations where status competition is more intense. Because calm in private is one thing. Calm under public scrutiny is another. Remaining calm in a private disagreement is relatively manageable. Remaining calm when you are challenged in front of others is a different level of discipline. Public disrespect amplifies emotional intensity because it introduces an audience. The presence of observers increases perceived status risk. Your brain interprets it as a larger threat because now reputation feels exposed. When someone corrects you sharply in a meeting, makes a sarcastic remark in a group, or questions your competence publicly, the pressure multiplies. You are no longer dealing only with the person in front of you. You are dealing with the perception of everyone watching. This is where many people lose composure. They rush to defend not just their idea, but their image. But understand something crucial. The audience is not evaluating the insult as much as they are evaluating your reaction. Most observers forget the exact words exchanged. What they remember is demeanor. Who looked stable? Who looked shaken? Who appeared in control? So in public settings, calm becomes even more strategic. The first principle in public disrespect is emotional pacing. When challenged publicly, slow down even more than usual. Speak slightly slower than the other person. Keep your tone level. Maintain neutral facial expression. This deliberate pacing signals internal steadiness. Fast speech signals urgency. Urgency signals insecurity. Measured speech signals authority. If someone interrupts you mid-sentence, do not immediately escalate. Pause. Look at them briefly. Then continue speaking at the same pace. This subtle refusal to be rushed communicates confidence without confrontation. If the interruption persists, then you address it directly but calmly. I would like to finish my point. No irritation. No sarcasm. Just clarity. Clarity without emotional charge carries weight. Now consider workplace dynamics specifically. Work environments often contain unspoken status hierarchies. Some individuals assert dominance through tone, body language, or dismissive comments. Others test boundaries to see who can be pressured. If you respond emotionally in these environments, you risk being labeled unstable. That label can follow you longer than the incident itself. So your goal is not to win every exchange. Your goal is to protect long-term credibility. Credibility grows when your behavior is consistent across stress levels. If you remain composed during tension, people subconsciously categorize you as reliable. Reliability increases perceived competence. Competence increases respect. Let us examine a common scenario. A colleague undermines your idea in a meeting with a dismissive tone. Instead of arguing immediately, you say calmly, "That's an interesting perspective. Let's examine the data behind both approaches." Notice what happened. You did not defend ego. You redirected to evidence. You shifted the frame from emotional conflict to analytical discussion. Frame control is a powerful tool. Whoever controls the frame controls the conversation. If the frame becomes emotional, the loudest person often wins temporarily. If the frame becomes analytical, the most composed person gains influence. So when faced with public disrespect, ask yourself, what frame serves me best here? Emotional frame or strategic frame? Choose strategic. There is also the principle of selective response timing. You do not always need to address disrespect immediately in front of everyone. Sometimes, the most powerful move is delayed correction. If someone makes a borderline disrespectful comment in public, you may choose to continue calmly and later speak to them privately. Earlier, the way that was phrased felt dismissive. I expect a more professional tone. Private correction preserves public composure while still enforcing boundaries. This combination is powerful. Public stability. Private firmness. Now consider social gatherings outside professional settings. In friend groups or informal environments, teasing and subtle jabs are common. The key is differentiating playful banter from genuine disrespect. If the teasing is mutual and light, overreacting damages social flow. But if the teasing consistently targets you and carries an edge, it becomes a pattern. Patterns require intervention. Again, the method remains similar. Pause. Assess. Respond calmly. You might say with a slight smile, we can joke, but let's keep it balanced. Simple. Direct. No hostility. People often push as far as you allow. When your boundaries are unclear, others experiment. When your boundaries are calmly enforced, experimentation decreases. Another advanced principle is emotional asymmetry. If someone attempts to provoke you with heightened emotion and you remain neutral, the imbalance creates psychological discomfort for them. Humans unconsciously seek emotional synchronization. When you do not match their intensity, they often lower theirs. This is especially effective with individuals who rely on intimidation tactics. Intensity loses power when it is not mirrored. However, do not confuse neutrality with coldness. You can remain calm and still maintain warmth in tone. Calm does not require emotional withdrawal from all interactions. It simply requires control over spikes. There will be situations where confrontation is unavoidable. In those moments, remember this structure. State the behavior. State the impact. State the boundary. All without raising your emotional intensity beyond necessary. For example, when you interrupt repeatedly, it disrupts the discussion. I need space to finish speaking. Clear. Controlled. Complete. No insults. No exaggeration. No personal attacks. When you avoid personal attacks, you preserve moral authority. And moral authority strengthens social positioning. Let us also address something subtle. Sometimes the person disrespecting you holds higher formal status, a manager, senior colleague, or authority figure. This complicates response because power imbalance exists. In such cases, calm becomes even more essential. Emotional reaction to someone above you in hierarchy can be interpreted as insubordination. But strategic calm can highlight unprofessional behavior without escalating conflict. You might say, I understand your point. I would appreciate a chance to explain my reasoning. Calm persistence often earns more respect than emotional challenge. Over time, consistent composure reshapes how even higher status individuals treat you. Because emotional volatility is easy to dismiss, composed resistance is harder to ignore. At this level, calm is no longer just emotional control. It becomes reputation management. Reputation is built slowly and destroyed quickly. Every time you handle disrespect with discipline, you deposit credibility. Every time you explode impulsively, you withdraw credibility. Choose deposits. In the next section, we will go deeper into internal conditioning, how to train yourself so that calm under disrespect becomes automatic rather than forced. Because ultimate control is when composure no longer requires conscious effort. Up to this point, you have learned how to pause, regulate, assess, and respond strategically. But there is a deeper level of mastery available. The level where calm is not something you force in the moment. It is something you naturally embody. To reach that level, you must condition your internal system. Most people attempt to stay calm only when conflict appears. That is like trying to build strength during the fight instead of before it. Emotional stability is not built in confrontation. It is built in preparation. The first conditioning principle is exposure without reaction. You deliberately practice not responding to minor irritations in daily life. Small inconveniences. Minor annoyances. Subtle frustrations. Every time you feel the impulse to react, you choose observation instead. This rewires your response threshold. If you cannot remain calm when someone cuts you off in traffic or interrupts casually, you will struggle when serious disrespect occurs. Discipline in small moments compounds into resilience in large ones. Calm is cumulative. The second conditioning principle is identity reinforcement. Your behavior follows the story you believe about yourself. If you see yourself as someone who has a temper, your brain will justify emotional spikes. But if you see yourself as someone who evaluates before responding, your behavior shifts. Begin reinforcing this identity deliberately. I am composed under pressure. I do not rush my reactions. I choose my words carefully. These are not empty affirmations. They are cognitive anchors. The more you repeat and confirm them through action, the more automatic they become. Identity precedes consistency. The third conditioning principle is emotional neutrality training. Most people live in extremes. Either highly reactive or overly suppressed. True stability exists in the middle. You can practice neutrality by observing your emotions without labeling them as good or bad. When irritation rises, instead of saying, I shouldn't feel this, you say, there is irritation. That subtle linguistic shift separates you from the emotion. You are not the anger. You are the observer of the anger. That separation increases control. When disrespect occurs and anger surfaces, you can internally acknowledge it without obeying it. Acknowledge, breathe, evaluate, respond. This becomes a sequence. Acknowledge. Stabilize. Choose. Over time, this sequence replaces impulsive reaction. Another powerful training tool is delayed expression. If something genuinely bothers you, delay your response intentionally by a few minutes or hours when possible. This delay allows emotional intensity to decrease naturally. When you return to address it, your tone will be more measured and your message clearer. Emotions peak and fade. If you wait through the peak, you avoid unnecessary escalation. There is also the principle of strategic silence. Silence is not absence. It is control of presence. When someone disrespects you and you respond with measured silence instead of immediate defense, you create space. Space creates uncertainty. Uncertainty often shifts power. However, silence must be intentional, not confused. Your posture and facial expression must remain neutral, not withdrawn. Intentional silence says, "I am evaluating." Withdrawn silence says, "I am hurt." The difference is subtle but significant. You must also train your self-worth away from external validation. Many emotional reactions to disrespect are rooted in the need to be seen positively. If your value depends heavily on other people's opinions, every negative comment feels destabilizing. Reduce that dependency. Build internal validation through discipline, competence, and personal standards. When you know your capabilities through action, external opinions lose intensity. Competence is a stabilizer. If you are consistently improving yourself, building skill, and maintaining integrity, your confidence becomes evidence-based rather than approval-based. Evidence-based confidence is harder to shake. Let us examine a deeper psychological truth. Some people disrespect others because they sense emotional reactivity. Emotional reactivity can invite testing. When others sense that your emotions are easily influenced, they subconsciously explore that leverage. When your emotional state becomes less predictable and less reactive, that testing decreases. People rarely attempt to destabilize those who remain unmoved. Your calm becomes a boundary before you even speak. This is why training matters more than technique. Techniques can fail under pressure if your internal state is unstable. But if your baseline state is steady, even imperfect responses appear controlled. Now consider long-term transformation. You are not aiming to eliminate emotion. Emotion is information. It signals when something matters. The goal is to prevent emotion from dictating behavior. You feel the spike. You acknowledge it. You remain composed. You choose your response. Repeated enough times, this becomes your default. Eventually, something shifts internally. You stop fearing disrespect. You stop anticipating attack in every interaction. You stop scanning constantly for signs of insult. Because you trust your capacity to handle it. That trust is liberation. When you no longer fear being disrespected, you stop behaving defensively. And when you stop behaving defensively, your presence changes. You appear relaxed yet alert. Measured yet confident. Available yet not easily shaken. This balance attracts respect naturally. Respect pursued desperately is rarely given. Respect embodied through composure is often granted without request. In the final section, we will consolidate everything into a complete operating system. A clear internal code you can carry into every interaction, ensuring that no matter the environment or intensity, your state remains yours. Because ultimate power is not dominating others. It is governing yourself. At this point, you understand the mechanics. You understand the nervous system response. You understand status dynamics. You understand boundaries, pacing, frame control, and conditioning. Now we consolidate everything into one internal operating system. Because knowledge scattered across ideas is weak. Knowledge organized into code is powerful. From now on, when disrespect appears, you follow a simple internal sequence. First, nothing is urgent. Disrespect feels urgent. Your body wants immediate response. But urgency is an illusion created by ego. Very few social interactions require instant defense. When you remove urgency, you regain space. Second, my state is mine. Other people's behavior belongs to them. Your emotional state belongs to you. When you confuse the two, you surrender ownership. Repeat this internally: my state is mine. This creates separation. Third, observe before deciding. Instead of assuming intent, observe tone, context, and pattern. Is this a one-time remark? Is this habitual? Is this insecurity? Is this a power play? Observation prevents miscalculation. Fourth, respond in proportion. Overreaction lowers status. Underreaction can invite repetition. The key is proportional response. Small disrespect may require indifference. Moderate disrespect may require calm correction. Repeated disrespect may require firm boundary or distance. Proportion signals emotional intelligence. Fifth, protect long-term reputation over short-term ego. In heated moments, ego demands immediate victory. But long-term influence is more valuable than momentary dominance. Ask yourself, what response strengthens my reputation tomorrow? Choose that one. Now let us address internal resilience at its deepest level. There will be moments when someone's words genuinely hurt. Calm does not mean you feel nothing. It means you do not allow what you feel to dictate behavior. Later, in private, you can process emotion fully. Reflect. Journal. Analyze. Improve. But in the moment, composure is priority. Processing and reacting are different phases. Confuse them and you lose control. Another powerful internal shift is detachment from the need to win verbally. Many people escalate because they want the last word. But the last word rarely determines perception. Composure does. If the interaction is going nowhere, disengage gracefully. We see this differently. Then withdraw attention. Attention is currency. When you withdraw it calmly, you end the exchange on your terms. There is also the concept of emotional leadership. When you maintain steady energy, others often align with it. In tense environments, the calmest individual subtly leads the emotional tone of the room. This is advanced power. You do not control others directly. You influence atmosphere indirectly. That influence is impossible without self-governance. Now let us return to identity. You are not trying to become someone who never feels anger. You are becoming someone who chooses when anger is useful. There are moments when intensity is necessary. When injustice is clear. When boundaries are repeatedly violated. But even intensity should be chosen, not triggered. Chosen intensity is controlled force. Triggered intensity is loss of control. There is a visible difference. Controlled force is brief, precise, and purposeful. Triggered force is scattered, prolonged, and emotional. Your goal is precision. Precision builds authority. Emotional chaos destroys it. As you apply these principles, you will notice shifts not only in how others treat you, but in how you perceive yourself. Self-respect increases when you handle pressure with discipline. Every time you remain composed in a situation that previously would have triggered you, you reinforce self-trust. Self-trust reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety increases calm. Calm increases clarity. Clarity improves decision-making. This becomes a reinforcing loop. Over time, disrespect no longer feels like a threat. It feels like data. Data about the other person. Data about the environment. Data about your own growth areas. When something no longer feels threatening, it loses power over you. And when it loses power over you, you become harder to manipulate. Understand this clearly. The ultimate reason to stay calm when disrespected is not to appear strong. It is to remain free. Free from emotional hijacking. Free from impulsive regret. Free from being controlled by the immaturity of others. Freedom is higher than dominance. Because dominance over others is unstable. Dominance over yourself is permanent. From this point forward, adopt a simple internal code. I do not rush. I do not chase approval. I do not defend ego unnecessarily. I observe. I evaluate. I respond with intention. When necessary, I enforce standards calmly. When unnecessary, I disengage without drama. This is emotional sovereignty. And sovereignty changes how you move through the world. You walk differently. You speak differently. You decide differently. Not because you are trying to impress, but because you are no longer easily shaken. Respect becomes a byproduct. Calm becomes natural. And power becomes quiet. When people disrespect you, remember this. Their behavior reveals their level. Your response reveals yours. Choose yours carefully. Now we go deeper. Up to this point, you have learned how to manage moments of disrespect. But there is another layer most people never examine. Why do certain people disrespect you more than others? Why are you calm with some individuals, yet triggered instantly by others? This is not random. It is pattern-based. Human beings do not react to words alone. They react to history, hierarchy, familiarity, and perceived threat. For example, disrespect from a stranger often feels less intense than disrespect from someone whose opinion you value. That is because emotional investment amplifies sensitivity. The more importance you assign to someone's perception, the more impact their words carry. So one advanced strategy for staying calm is emotional recalibration of importance. Not everyone deserves equal psychological weight. If you unconsciously elevate someone's opinion above your own, their criticism becomes destabilizing. But when you consciously rebalance that internal hierarchy, the emotional spike decreases. Ask yourself, does this person consistently demonstrate wisdom? Do they hold values I respect? Do they live in a way I would emulate? If not, why does their opinion hold such power over my nervous system? This question alone weakens emotional dependency. Now consider another pattern. Disrespect often follows perceived imbalance. If someone senses insecurity, hesitation, or approval-seeking behavior, they may push boundaries more frequently. This is not always malicious. Sometimes it is subconscious dominance behavior. Humans constantly evaluate each other's emotional strength. When your reactions communicate fragility, some individuals test further. But when your reactions communicate stability, those tests reduce. This is why internal discipline changes external treatment over time. However, do not misunderstand this principle. Not all disrespect is invited. Sometimes you encounter individuals who are habitually abrasive or arrogant. Their behavior is less about you and more about their own internal disorder. In those cases, your calm protects your energy. You cannot reform everyone. You can only regulate yourself. Now let us examine a high-intensity scenario. Imagine someone publicly mocks you with the intention to embarrass. Your body heats. Your thoughts sharpen. Your ego demands retaliation. In this precise moment, you have two choices. Protect pride. Or protect position. Protecting pride may feel satisfying temporarily. You retaliate sharply. You match their intensity. Perhaps you even win the exchange verbally. But you may appear emotionally charged. Protecting position requires something harder. You slow down. You allow a brief silence. You respond with controlled clarity or even subtle humor. For example, if someone says mockingly, "You always have something to say, don't you?" Instead of defensiveness, you respond calmly, only when it adds value. Short. Stable. Controlled. No anger. No apology. No over-explanation. That type of response preserves position without escalating ego battle. Another advanced method is emotional misdirection. When someone attempts to provoke you, they expect resistance. If instead you respond with calm acknowledgement, you disrupt their script. For example, interesting perspective. This neutral phrase removes fuel from confrontation. It does not concede. It does not attack. It diffuses. Diffusion is power when applied intentionally. But here is the critical insight. Calm must be backed by internal confidence. If inside you feel inferior while acting calm externally, the tension leaks through subtle cues, tight jaw, rigid posture, forced tone. So long-term mastery requires strengthening your internal belief system. Strengthen competence. Strengthen physical health. Strengthen discipline. Strengthen skill. When you are actively improving your life, disrespect feels less threatening because your identity is anchored in progress. Progress stabilizes ego. Stagnation amplifies insecurity. Another layer to examine is self-talk. In moments of disrespect, your internal dialogue often escalates the situation before you even speak. How dare they? They're trying to embarrass me. Everyone thinks I'm weak now. This internal narrative intensifies emotion. Interrupt it. You must become anchor. This does not mean you never assert. It means you assert from stability. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice. Every challenge becomes conditioning. And slowly, the fear of disrespect dissolves. Because you understand something fundamental. Disrespect cannot damage you unless you cooperate with it emotionally. And you no longer cooperate. In the next section, we will consolidate everything into a final integration, a complete internal doctrine you carry into every conversation, every environment, every challenge. Because calm under disrespect is not a tactic. It is a way of being. Now we integrate everything. Up to this point, you have learned the mechanics, the psychology, the conditioning, the boundaries, the public dynamics, the competitive environments, and the restructuring of identity. But mastery requires compression. You must be able to carry all of this into a single internal doctrine. Because in real moments of disrespect, you will not remember dozens of concepts. You will remember a few core principles. So here is the integration. Disrespect is stimulus. Reaction is choice. Power is control of choice. Everything reduces to this. When someone disrespects you, nothing has happened yet except vibration in the air and interpretation in your mind. The meaning is assigned by you. If you interpret it as threat, your body mobilizes for defense. If you interpret it as information, your mind mobilizes for analysis. Interpretation precedes emotion. Emotion precedes behavior. Behavior precedes consequence. So control interpretation, and you control the chain. This is structural calm. Structural calm does not depend on personality. It depends on cognitive framing. Now embed this internal doctrine. Nothing is personal unless I make it personal. Other people's words reveal their state, not my worth. My nervous system does not belong to strangers. My composure is my responsibility. These are not motivational phrases. They are structural rules. When you adopt structural rules, your reactions begin to reorganize automatically. Let us examine the final barrier. Ego. Ego demands validation. Ego demands recognition. Ego demands immediate correction of perceived insult. But ego is fragile. It is always scanning for threat. True confidence is quieter. True confidence does not rush to defend. It evaluates first. When someone disrespects you, ego says, show them. Confidence says, observe them. Ego says, prove yourself. Confidence says, demonstrate over time. Ego wants emotional victory. Confidence wants long-term positioning. When you choose confidence over ego, your responses change instantly. Now let us address the ultimate test. What if someone continues disrespecting you despite calm correction? At this point, composure remains, but consequences become necessary. You either escalate boundaries formally, or you reduce access, or you disengage entirely. Calm does not eliminate consequences. It clarifies them. Consequences delivered calmly carry more weight than consequences delivered emotionally. Because they appear intentional, not impulsive. Now step back and look at your life. Imagine moving through every interaction with this doctrine. You walk into rooms without anticipating attack. You speak without over-defending. You listen without internal panic. You correct without aggression. You disengage without drama. This is emotional sovereignty. And sovereignty changes posture. You sit differently. You maintain eye contact differently. Your voice carries differently. Because your nervous system is no longer hijacked by minor threats. Most people live reactive lives. They are emotionally pulled by every comment, every tone shift, every perceived slight. Their internal state fluctuates based on external behavior. That is instability. You are building stability. Stability creates gravity. Gravity creates respect. Not forced respect. Earned respect. And even when respect is not given, you remain unaffected. That is higher power. Now understand something final. Staying calm when people disrespect you is not about controlling them. It is about refusing to let them control you. You cannot prevent all disrespect. You cannot prevent immaturity in others. You cannot prevent envy, projection, insecurity, or dominance attempts. But you can prevent emotional surrender. Every time you remain steady under pressure, you strengthen neural discipline. Every time you respond instead of react, you increase internal authority. Every time you choose composure over ego, you build long-term influence. Eventually, disrespect stops feeling like attack. It feels like background noise. You do not ignore everything. You simply choose wisely. You engage when necessary. You correct when strategic. You disengage when pointless. And you remain internally stable through all of it. This is the final integration. I do not rush my reactions. I do not internalize random opinions. I do not escalate for ego. I choose proportion. I protect reputation over pride. I enforce standards calmly. I disengage without emotional leakage. I remain centered. When this becomes your baseline, something remarkable happens. You stop fearing disrespect. And when you stop fearing it, others sense it. Calm under disrespect becomes your signature. Your presence becomes heavier. Your words become more deliberate. Your silence becomes meaningful. You do not chase respect. You embody it. And when disrespect appears, it finds no emotional leverage. Because your state remains yours. Always. There is one final dimension of disrespect that must be understood if you want complete mastery. Internal disrespect. Before others disrespect you, there are often moments where you subtly disrespect yourself. You ignore your own standards. You tolerate behavior you know you dislike. You laugh at jokes that diminish you. You over-explain to gain approval. You apologize for existing. These small internal compromises accumulate. And when someone else disrespects you externally, the pain intensifies because it echoes something you have already allowed internally. True calm under disrespect begins with self-respect in private. If you violate your own standards repeatedly, your nervous system becomes unstable. You begin to rely more heavily on external validation to restore worth. But if you maintain personal discipline, integrity, and boundaries when no one is watching, your foundation strengthens. Foundation determines reaction. When your foundation is solid, external pressure does not crack it easily. Now consider this carefully. Calm is not something you perform in front of others. It is something you cultivate when alone. How you speak to yourself matters. If your internal dialogue is harsh, critical, and reactive, you are training instability. Replace internal aggression with structured evaluation. Instead of saying, "I always mess up," say, "That could have been handled better. I will adjust." This tone shift reduces internal chaos. Internal chaos magnifies external triggers. Internal order reduces them. There is also the issue of comparison. Many emotional reactions to disrespect are rooted in comparison insecurity. If someone appears more confident, more successful, or more socially dominant, and then disrespects you, the reaction may intensify because it activates comparison anxiety. To neutralize this, focus on trajectory instead of position. Position compares where you are now. Trajectory evaluates where you are going. If your trajectory is upward, learning, improving, strengthening, then temporary comparison loses emotional impact. Progress stabilizes ego. Stagnation destabilizes it. Another advanced principle is selective exposure. If you continuously expose yourself to environments where disrespect is normalized, your nervous system remains on edge. Choose environments wisely. Surround yourself with individuals who value composure and direct communication rather than constant emotional volatility. Environment influences baseline calm. Now let us explore humiliation, one of the strongest forms of social pain. Humiliation feels devastating because it combines public exposure with perceived loss of status. The instinct in humiliation is either explosive retaliation or complete withdrawal. But the disciplined response is measured acknowledgement. If appropriate, you can even use self-aware humor to diffuse the moment. This demonstrates that your identity is not fragile. Fragility invites further pressure. Stability discourages it. However, humor must be controlled and not self-degrading. There is a difference between confidence-based humor and self-dismissive humor. Confidence-based humor signals resilience. Self-dismissive humor signals insecurity. Discern the difference. Now let us examine something subtle. When you stay calm during disrespect, you may initially feel unresolved tension inside. The adrenaline does not disappear instantly. This is normal. Emotional regulation does not mean emotional absence. It means delayed processing. Later, in private, you release tension constructively. Through exercise. Through reflection. Through journaling. Through strategic conversation. If you suppress repeatedly without release, calm becomes brittle. Brittle calm eventually cracks. Flexible calm endures. Flexibility means you allow yourself to feel privately while remaining composed publicly. That balance sustains long-term control. Now consider long-term identity transformation. Over months of disciplined response, your brain recalibrates its threat detection system. What once felt like major disrespect now feels minor. What once triggered anger now triggers analysis. What once destabilized you now barely registers. This is neural adaptation. Your brain learns that social threat does not equal survival threat. And when that learning solidifies, calm becomes effortless. Effortless calm is powerful because it frees cognitive bandwidth. Instead of mentally replaying arguments for hours, you move forward quickly. Instead of ruminating on insults, you focus on growth. Energy once wasted on reaction becomes available for creation. This is where true advantage emerges. Reactive individuals exhaust themselves. Composed individuals conserve energy. Energy conservation compounds into performance. Performance compounds into competence. Competence compounds into respect. The cycle reinforces itself. And at some point, something shifts permanently. You no longer interpret disrespect as attack. You interpret it as signal. Signal of insecurity. Signal of misalignment. Signal of misunderstanding. Signal of someone testing limits. Signals are neutral. They are not personal assaults. And neutral interpretation dissolves emotional volatility. In the next section, we will move into advanced psychological case studies, layered real-world scenarios and how a composed mind navigates each one without surrendering authority. Let us move into layered scenarios. Because theory becomes real only when applied under pressure. Scenario 1. A colleague publicly questions your competence in a meeting. Their tone is sharp. Their wording implies you overlooked something obvious. Others are watching. Your body reacts instantly. The discipline sequence begins. Pause. Breathe once, slowly. Lower urgency internally. You respond, "I appreciate the concern. Let's look at the numbers together." Notice what happened. You did not defend ego. You redirected to evidence. You shifted the frame from personal attack to analytical review. By doing this, you protect position instead of pride. Even if the colleague was attempting to diminish you, your calm reframing neutralizes the emotional edge. The room observes composure, not conflict. Scenario 2. A friend repeatedly makes subtle jokes at your expense in group settings. The jokes are framed as humor, but the pattern is consistent. This is boundary testing. If you laugh nervously each time, you reinforce the pattern. If you explode angrily, you escalate socially. The disciplined approach is calm interruption at the right moment. You say with steady tone, "We can joke, but let's keep it balanced." Short. Direct. No hostility. Delivered once, clearly. If the behavior continues, you escalate proportionally. You reduce engagement or address it privately. Calm correction, not emotional reaction. Scenario 3. An authority figure speaks to you dismissively. They interrupt, talk over you, or belittle your input. This is high-pressure territory because hierarchy exists. Emotional retaliation here risks long-term consequences. Instead, you apply strategic persistence. When interrupted, you calmly say, "I would like to complete that thought." If dismissed, you respond with composed clarification rather than defensive argument. Over time, consistent composure under hierarchy shifts perception. Emotional volatility in lower hierarchy signals weakness. Measured resistance signals confidence. Scenario 4. Online criticism. Someone comments publicly, mocking your work. If you react defensively in the comments section, you amplify their influence. Instead, you evaluate. Is there constructive insight? Extract it. Is it pure noise? Ignore it. Silence in the face of low-value criticism signals that your energy is not easily accessed. Attention is leverage. Use it sparingly. Scenario 5. Romantic rejection framed disrespectfully. Someone dismisses you in a way that feels demeaning. The instinct is to prove yourself or retaliate. But controlled indifference here is power. You do not argue for acceptance. You acknowledge mismatch and move forward. Chasing respect from someone who withholds it lowers perceived value. Walking away calmly preserves dignity. In each of these scenarios, the underlying structure remains identical. No urgency. Observe. Assess pattern. Respond proportionally. Protect long-term positioning. Now let us examine something deeper. There are moments when staying calm feels almost impossible. The insult hits a core insecurity. It feels personal because it touches something unresolved. In those moments, you must increase internal distance. Mentally step back and observe yourself reacting. Instead of being inside the emotion, watch it. You might think internally, there is anger rising. This language creates separation. Separation weakens intensity. Intensity without separation overwhelms. When you observe instead of identify, you maintain partial control even during spikes. Another advanced technique is predictive rehearsal. Before entering high-pressure environments, anticipate possible disrespect scenarios. Visualize yourself responding calmly. Mental rehearsal strengthens neural pathways. Athletes use this method to improve performance under pressure. You can apply it socially. Rehearse composure. Rehearsed calm becomes accessible calm. Now let us address chronic environments. If you are in a workplace or a social circle where disrespect is systemic, calm alone is insufficient. You must evaluate alignment. Sometimes the most powerful response is strategic exit. Remaining calm does not require enduring toxic systems indefinitely. Sovereignty includes choice of environment. Leaving dysfunctional dynamics is not weakness. It is self-governance. As you implement these strategies consistently, you will notice a reduction in internal volatility. Triggers become predictable. Responses become structured. Reputation stabilizes. And something unexpected occurs. People begin consulting you during tense situations. Because calm individuals become reference points. When conflict arises, groups look to the person who appears least destabilized. That can become you. Calm becomes influence. Influence becomes authority. Authority increases respect. But remember this clearly. The goal was never external dominance. The goal was internal mastery. External respect is byproduct. Internal stability is achievement. In the next section, we will deepen the structural transformation, shifting from reactive self to composed identity permanently, ensuring that even under repeated pressure, your baseline remains steady. Now we move into permanent identity restructuring. Temporary calm is technique. Permanent calm is transformation. Up to this point, you have been applying discipline to specific situations. But lasting change requires rewiring how you see yourself in social hierarchies. Most people unconsciously place themselves below others in subtle ways. They assume others are more confident, more competent, more socially dominant. This hidden hierarchy increases sensitivity to disrespect. If you see yourself as lower, any slight feels confirming. But when you reposition yourself internally as equal, not superior, not inferior, just equal, emotional spikes decrease. Equality stabilizes perception. You do not need to dominate. You do not need to submit. You stand. That standing changes posture, tone, and reaction automatically. There is also the concept of internal authority. Internal authority means you validate your own perspective before seeking approval. When someone disagrees or dismisses you, it does not instantly destabilize you because you have already evaluated your stance. Self-evaluated positions are stronger than socially dependent ones. If your confidence depends on others agreeing, disrespect will shake you. If your confidence depends on internal review, disagreement becomes manageable. Now examine the concept of emotional independence. Emotional dependence sounds like this internally. They made me angry. They embarrassed me. They ruined my mood. Emotional independence sounds different. I allowed myself to become angry. I interpreted that as embarrassment. I chose to carry that mood. Language reveals ownership. Ownership creates power. If you believe others control your emotions, you remain reactive. If you accept that interpretation and reaction are yours, control increases. This is not about blame. It is about agency. Agency restores stability. Another permanent shift is expectation management. If you expect universal respect, you will be disappointed frequently. But if you expect human imperfection, occasional immaturity, and periodic ego clashes, you are less surprised. Surprise intensifies reaction. Anticipation reduces it. Expect that some people will test you. Expect that some will project insecurity. Expect that not everyone will like you. Expectation neutralizes shock. Neutral shock reduces emotional spike. Now let us address pride. There is healthy pride and fragile pride. Healthy pride is rooted in effort, discipline, and integrity. Fragile pride is rooted in image and validation. Fragile pride reacts instantly to perceived insult. Healthy pride evaluates before responding. Build pride on effort. If you know you work hard, maintain standards, and act with integrity, disrespect cannot dismantle you easily. Because your pride is evidence-based. Now consider silence again at a deeper level. Silence used correctly is not avoidance. It is filtering. You do not respond to every comment. You do not explain every decision. You do not justify every action. Over-explanation signals insecurity. Measured communication signals confidence. Speak when necessary. Be brief when possible. Clarity over volume. This communication style reduces opportunities for escalation. Another permanent shift involves detaching from outcome. If you enter interactions focused on winning, you become emotionally invested in reaction. If you enter focused on expressing clearly and maintaining composure, outcome becomes secondary. Outcome detachment reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety stabilizes tone. Stable tone increases influence. This is strategic psychology. Now let us consolidate this identity. You are not someone who avoids confrontation. You are someone who approaches it deliberately. You are not someone who suppresses emotion. You are someone who regulates emotion. You are not someone who tolerates disrespect endlessly. You are someone who enforces boundaries calmly. You do not chase respect. You embody stability. And stability attracts respect over time. As this identity solidifies, something remarkable happens. You stop replaying disrespect in your mind for hours. Rumination decreases. Mental clarity increases. Energy is redirected toward goals instead of arguments. This is hidden advantage. Reactive individuals waste enormous mental bandwidth. Composed individuals conserve it. Bandwidth conserved compounds into achievement. Achievement reinforces confidence. Confidence reduces reactivity further. The cycle strengthens. At this stage, calm is no longer forced. It becomes default. You still feel emotion. But it does not own you. You experience spikes. But they pass quickly. You respond strategically. Not because you must. but because it is who you are now. In the next section, we will move into final consolidation, compressing everything into a lifelong internal doctrine you can revisit during any confrontation, ensuring that no matter how intense the disrespect, your center remains intact. Now we compress everything into a lifelong internal doctrine. Because in real moments of confrontation, you will not remember chapters. You will remember principles. And principles must be simple enough to apply under pressure, yet strong enough to hold structure. Here is the doctrine. Nothing anyone says can change my value unless I agree with it. Value is not assigned externally. It is demonstrated internally through action, discipline, and integrity. If someone questions you unfairly, that does not reduce your worth. It only reveals their perception. Perception is not reality. This distinction is stabilizing. Second principle. Emotion is information, not instruction. When you feel anger, embarrassment, or irritation, you do not treat it as command. You treat it as data. Data must be evaluated before action. When emotion becomes instruction, chaos follows. When emotion becomes information, intelligence follows. Third principle. Speed reduces control. Slow down. Speak slower. Move slower. Breathe slower. Slowness interrupts impulse. Impulse weakens authority. Measured pacing strengthens it. Fourth principle. Reputation outweighs ego. In any interaction, ask yourself which response strengthens your long-term reputation. Sometimes silence strengthens it. Sometimes direct correction strengthens it. Sometimes disengagement strengthens it. Very rarely does emotional explosion strengthen it. Protect the long game. Fifth principle. Boundaries require clarity, not aggression. If someone crosses a line, state it calmly. This is not acceptable. I expect respect in this conversation. No raised voice. No insults. Clarity is force when delivered with composure. Sixth principle. Selective engagement preserves power. You do not respond to everything. You do not chase every misunderstanding. You choose your battles carefully. Energy directed wisely multiplies influence. Energy scattered emotionally diminishes it. Seventh principle. Environment matters. If disrespect is constant and systemic, reevaluate alignment. Calm does not mean enduring dysfunction forever. Self-governance includes the courage to withdraw. Eighth principle. Internal validation precedes external respect. If you rely heavily on approval, disrespect will destabilize you. If your confidence is anchored in discipline and progress, external opinions lose weight. Progress is the antidote to insecurity. Ninth principle. Calm is leverage. When you remain composed, you create asymmetry. Emotional individuals lose control. Composed individuals maintain it. Asymmetry shifts pressure. Pressure shifts dynamics. 10th principle. I choose. This is the core. I choose how I interpret. I choose how I respond. I choose when to escalate. I choose when to disengage. Choice is sovereignty. Without choice, there is reaction. With choice, there is power. Now understand the transformation fully. At the beginning, disrespect triggered urgency. Your body reacted. Your thoughts raced. Your ego demanded defense. Now, disrespect triggers assessment. Your body stabilizes faster. Your thoughts organize. Your response is deliberate. This is growth. But there is one final layer. Forgiveness of yourself. There will still be moments when you react imperfectly. Moments where emotion spikes too quickly. Moments where you speak sharper than intended. Do not turn those moments into self-attack. Review them analytically. Adjust. Improve. Growth requires correction, not condemnation. Self-condemnation increases internal volatility. Correction increases stability. Over time, this doctrine becomes identity. You walk into tense rooms without anxiety. You speak in challenging conversations without overthinking. You disengage from low-value conflict without resentment. You enforce standards without hostility. Your nervous system becomes disciplined. Your presence becomes heavier. Your words become intentional. And most importantly, your peace becomes independent. Independent from tone. Independent from opinion. Independent from immature behavior. This is not passive calm. This is trained composure. This is strategic stillness. This is emotional sovereignty. When someone disrespects you now, the internal sequence is automatic. Pause. Breathe. Assess. Choose. Respond proportionally. Protect long-term positioning. And remain centered. Because your state belongs to you. Always. There is still a deeper reinforcement layer required if this is to become permanent. Because understanding principles intellectually is one thing. Living them instinctively under repeated pressure is another. So now we move into reinforcement through repetition and expansion. Calm under disrespect is not a single skill. It is the result of multiple aligned systems working together: nervous system regulation, identity stability, boundary clarity, and ego discipline. If even one of these systems is weak, reaction returns. Let us strengthen each one further. First, nervous system mastery at an advanced level. Your nervous system reacts based on perceived threat, not objective reality. If your baseline stress level is high, poor sleep, poor diet, constant stimulation, unresolved stress, your threshold for reaction lowers dramatically. A fatigued nervous system overreacts. A regulated nervous system evaluates. This means your lifestyle directly affects your composure. Sleep stabilizes emotion. Physical training reduces stress reactivity. Controlled breathing lowers baseline anxiety. Meditation increases awareness of internal shifts. These are not optional if you want structural calm. They are foundations. You cannot expect composure in confrontation if your baseline state is chaotic. Calm is easier when your system is not overloaded. Second, identity consolidation. Earlier, you began reinforcing identity statements. Now deepen them through evidence. After every interaction where you maintain composure, reflect briefly. I handled that well. I remained steady. I enforced clearly. These reflections are not ego inflation. They are neural reinforcement. Your brain strengthens patterns it recognizes. If you never acknowledge your growth, you weaken consolidation. Identity solidifies through recognition of action. Third, boundary precision. Vague boundaries invite repeated pressure. Precise boundaries reduce ambiguity. Instead of general frustration like, "I don't like being talked over," refine it internally to, "If interrupted repeatedly, I will calmly request space to finish." Specific responses reduce hesitation. Hesitation increases anxiety. Precision reduces internal conflict. Fourth, ego recalibration. Ego often disguises itself as self-respect. But self-respect does not require immediate retaliation. Ask yourself in tense moments, is this my values speaking or my ego reacting? Values are stable. Ego is impulsive. Values focus on standards. Ego focuses on winning. Choose values. Fifth, delayed emotional processing. After an intense interaction, do not suppress reflection. Review calmly. Ask, was my response proportional? Did I maintain posture and tone? Was escalation necessary? Would I adjust anything next time? This review transforms every confrontation into training. Without review, growth stagnates. With review, mastery compounds. Now let us address repeated disrespect from multiple sources. If you consistently experience disrespect across different environments, consider introspection. Are your boundaries clearly communicated? Is your posture confident? Is your tone assertive? Do you over-explain frequently? Sometimes subtle behaviors signal openness to testing. Refine posture. Stand upright. Maintain eye contact without aggression. Speak in measured pace. Avoid filler words. These adjustments alter perception. Perception alters treatment. However, do not become paranoid. Not every disagreement is disrespect. Disagreement is neutral. Disrespect is dismissive intent. Learn to distinguish. Mislabeling disagreement as disrespect increases unnecessary reaction. Precision in interpretation protects calm. Now let us examine social reputation over years. If you consistently respond with composure, something powerful happens. Your name becomes associated with steadiness. People preemptively adjust behavior around you. They speak more carefully. They interrupt less. They escalate less. Because they anticipate stability, not volatility. Stability builds silent authority. And silent authority is durable. But if you occasionally explode dramatically, that reputation fractures. Consistency is essential. Inconsistency reintroduces unpredictability. Unpredictability reduces respect. Now consider competitive hierarchies again. In environments where dominance games are frequent, calm must be paired with subtle strength. Strength can be conveyed through concise speech. Direct eye contact. Minimal unnecessary movement. Clear decision-making. Calm without strength appears passive. Calm with strength appears controlled. Balance them. You do not seek intimidation. You project steadiness. There is also an advanced mental reframing technique. View disrespect as training weight. Every time someone attempts to provoke you, it is an opportunity to strengthen discipline. Instead of resenting the moment, use it. This is practice. This reframing reduces emotional resistance. Resistance increases suffering. Acceptance reduces it. You accept that disrespect will occasionally occur. And you accept that each instance strengthens you when handled correctly. Now let us discuss long-term emotional freedom. When you are no longer reactive to disrespect, something unexpected happens. You become less reactive to praise as well. Your identity stabilizes beyond extremes. You are not inflated by approval. You are not crushed by criticism. You operate from internal equilibrium. Equilibrium is power. Because extreme highs and lows destabilize judgment. Balanced individuals make better decisions. Better decisions improve life trajectory. Improved trajectory reinforces confidence. Confidence reduces reactivity. The cycle continues upward. Now we move toward final consolidation. In the remaining section, we will integrate lifestyle discipline, identity sovereignty, emotional regulation, and strategic communication into one seamless state of being, ensuring that not only do you handle disrespect calmly, but you move through life with grounded authority that makes disrespect increasingly rare. Now we bring everything together into a seamless state of being. At the highest level, staying calm when people disrespect you is no longer about managing incidents. It is about embodying a regulated nervous system, a stable identity, disciplined communication, and strategic self-respect simultaneously. When these elements align, disrespect loses its emotional charge before it even forms. Let us integrate them clearly. Your lifestyle regulates your baseline. Your baseline regulates your reaction speed. Your identity regulates your interpretation. Your boundaries regulate your response. Your discipline regulates your consistency. When any one of these is weak, reaction increases. When all are aligned, composure becomes natural. Now imagine this as a layered structure. At the base is physical regulation. Sleep. Training. Breathing. Recovery. If your physiology is unstable, emotional volatility rises. Above that is identity clarity. You know who you are. You know your standards. You know your values. You are not improvising your identity in every conversation. Above that is interpretive discipline. You do not assume malicious intent automatically. You analyze before reacting. Above that is communicative precision. You speak clearly. You correct calmly. You disengage strategically. At the top is emotional sovereignty. You do not internalize what does not belong to you. You do not surrender your state. When these layers function together, your presence changes permanently. You enter rooms without scanning for threat. You speak without defensive energy. You listen without preparing counterattacks. You respond without urgency. That absence of urgency is powerful. Because urgency signals insecurity. Stillness signals strength. Now understand something essential. People often disrespect others because they sense instability. When instability disappears, many minor forms of disrespect vanish automatically. Your tone becomes harder to challenge. Your posture becomes harder to dismiss. Your words become harder to interrupt. Not because you dominate, but because you are centered. Centering is subtle dominance. Not dominance over others. Dominance over self. Now consider long-term relational impact. If you remain calm consistently, even those who initially disrespected you begin adjusting unconsciously. They test less. They provoke less. They choose words more carefully. Because they sense that emotional manipulation does not work. Manipulation requires reaction. When reaction disappears, manipulation loses leverage. Let us also address compassion. Staying calm under disrespect does not require hostility. Sometimes people disrespect out of insecurity, stress, or unresolved pain. When you are internally stable, you can observe this without absorbing it. This perspective reduces resentment. Reduced resentment increases peace. Peace increases clarity. Clarity strengthens calm further. Now reflect on your future self. Months from now, after consistent practice, someone attempts to provoke you. You feel the surge briefly. You breathe once. Your posture remains steady. Your voice remains measured. You respond proportionally or disengage. And within seconds, your nervous system resets. No rumination. No replay. No lingering tension. This is advanced composure. It is not coldness. It is regulated warmth. You still care. You still enforce standards. But you are not destabilized. Now let us compress everything into one final operational sequence you can carry permanently. When confronted with disrespect, pause immediately. Breathe slowly. Lower urgency. Observe intent. Choose proportional response. Speak clearly without raising intensity. Enforce boundary if necessary. Disengage if strategic. Review privately for growth. Then release. Release is critical. Do not carry the moment beyond necessity. Release prevents rumination. Rumination reactivates emotion. Release protects energy. Energy protected compounds into achievement. Achievement reinforces identity. Identity stabilizes emotion. The system becomes self-reinforcing. Over time, calm is no longer effortful. It becomes automatic. You stop thinking about staying calm. You simply are. And that state radiates. People sense stability intuitively. They feel less inclined to challenge someone who appears grounded. You do not chase respect. You project centeredness. Centeredness attracts respect. But even when it does not, you remain unaffected. Because the goal was never external control. It was internal sovereignty. You cannot stop all disrespect. But you can stop it from entering your nervous system. You cannot prevent all ego clashes. But you can prevent ego from controlling you. You cannot control others' immaturity. But you can control your discipline. And discipline becomes identity. Identity becomes presence. Presence becomes authority. Authority becomes quiet power. And quiet power does not react impulsively. It chooses. Always. We now move into the final reinforcement phase, the stage where calm becomes integrated not just in moments of disrespect, but in your overall perception of power, identity, and control. Because staying calm when disrespected is ultimately about how you define power. Most people define power as the ability to dominate others. To win arguments. To silence critics. To overpower opposition. But this definition creates constant vulnerability. If power depends on controlling others, then every disagreement becomes a threat. Every disrespect becomes a battle. Every criticism becomes war. That is exhausting. True power is control over self. When your emotional state cannot be easily manipulated, you possess something rare. You are difficult to provoke. Difficult to intimidate. Difficult to destabilize. And people subconsciously register that. Let us go deeper. Disrespect often functions as a probe. It tests emotional boundaries. If someone senses you are easily disturbed, they may push further. If someone senses you are internally anchored, they adjust. This does not mean no one will ever disrespect you again. It means frequency decreases. Intensity decreases. And when it does occur, your response remains measured. Now understand the final psychological shift. Disrespect is not a personal attack on your worth. It is an external stimulus interacting with your internal structure. If your structure is weak, stimulus causes collapse. If your structure is strong, stimulus produces little movement. So strengthen structure. Structure is built through daily discipline. Do difficult tasks without complaint. Maintain commitments. Keep promises to yourself. When you repeatedly prove to yourself that you are disciplined, your self-respect increases. And self-respect reduces sensitivity. Because you know your effort. You know your integrity. You know your standards. External noise becomes less relevant. Now let us address subtle emotional traps. Sometimes staying calm can turn into emotional distancing from everything. You must avoid this extreme. The goal is not emotional numbness. The goal is emotional regulation. You still express joy. You still express care. You still engage deeply. But when challenged, you remain steady. Flexibility with stability. Not rigidity. Rigidity breaks under extreme force. Flexibility absorbs pressure. Calm is flexible strength. Another subtle trap is silent resentment. If you stay outwardly calm but internally replay disrespect for hours, the discipline is incomplete. Complete discipline includes release. After a situation ends, you consciously let it go. You do not replay the insult. You do not rehearse revenge. You do not mentally argue with imaginary versions of the person. Rumination is delayed reaction. Release is closure. If something requires action, you plan it calmly. If it does not, you drop it. Energy is finite. Protect it. Now examine your long-term trajectory. If you apply everything consistently, 5 changes occur gradually. First, your emotional reaction time slows. Second, your voice stabilizes under pressure. Third, your posture remains steady even when challenged. Fourth, people interrupt you less. Fifth, your internal confidence becomes less dependent on approval. These changes compound quietly. Over years, they transform reputation. People begin describing you with words like composed, steady, grounded, reliable. Those descriptors increase opportunity. Because individuals trust stability. Trust creates influence. Influence increases authority. Authority increases respect. And respect becomes natural. But again, respect was never the primary objective. Peace was. Control was. Sovereignty was. Now we approach the final consolidation. Imagine a future confrontation. Someone speaks sharply. Others look at you. There is tension in the room. Your body begins its automatic response. But your training activates immediately. Pause. Breathe. Lower urgency. Observe. Respond proportionally. No rush. No escalation. No surrender. The moment passes. The room stabilizes. You continue forward without emotional residue. Later that night, you do not replay it obsessively. You do not feel diminished. You do not feel victorious either. You feel neutral. Centered. That neutrality is freedom. Freedom from being emotionally pulled by immaturity. Freedom from ego wars. Freedom from internal chaos. And that freedom allows focus on higher pursuits. Building skill. Building strength. Building legacy. Reactive individuals spend years fighting minor battles. Disciplined individuals invest years building themselves. Choose investment. Now let us state the final integration clearly. I am responsible for my state. I interpret before reacting. I protect long-term positioning. I enforce standards calmly. I disengage when necessary. I release what does not matter. I remain centered regardless of behavior around me. This is not temporary strategy. This is permanent identity. And once identity shifts, behavior follows automatically. You do not need to remind yourself constantly. You simply operate differently. Calm becomes default. Strength becomes quiet. Presence becomes grounded. And disrespect loses its emotional grip entirely. We now enter the final philosophical consolidation, the layer where calm under disrespect is no longer a response strategy, but a worldview. Because ultimately, the way you interpret disrespect reflects how you interpret human behavior itself. Human beings are imperfect. They project. They compete. They compare. They test. They protect ego. They act from insecurity. When you understand this deeply, disrespect stops feeling extraordinary. It becomes predictable. And predictability reduces emotional shock. Shock fuels reaction. Expectation stabilizes response. So the final shift is this. You no longer expect maturity from everyone. You expect variability. You expect occasional immaturity. You expect ego clashes. And because you expect them, you are not destabilized when they occur. Expectation transforms surprise into routine. Routine reduces emotional intensity. Now consider emotional hierarchy. There are things in life that deserve strong emotional response: injustice, betrayal of core values, serious ethical violations. Minor social disrespect does not belong in that category. When you assign it excessive emotional weight, you distort hierarchy. Calm requires correct hierarchy. Not every comment deserves intensity. Not every disagreement deserves escalation. Reserve emotional force for what truly matters. Everything else receives measured response. This emotional budgeting protects energy. And energy is life currency. Reactive individuals waste energy on trivial battles. Disciplined individuals allocate energy strategically. Allocation determines progress. Now let us examine the ultimate ego dismantling. If someone disrespects you unfairly, and you remain calm, what truly happens? Your ego does not get immediate satisfaction. But your character strengthens. Character built quietly is more durable than pride defended loudly. Loud defense impresses temporarily. Quiet composure impresses deeply. And depth lasts longer. Another advanced insight. Sometimes the greatest demonstration of power is not in the response itself, but in the absence of emotional shift. If your facial expression barely changes, if your tone remains steady, if your breathing does not accelerate, you communicate something powerful without saying much. You communicate that your internal world is not easily accessed. Accessibility determines vulnerability. When your emotional state is easily accessed, you are vulnerable to manipulation. When your emotional state is stable and self-contained, you are difficult to move. Now let us go even deeper. What is disrespect, at its core? It is an attempt, conscious or unconscious, to alter perceived hierarchy. To lower your perceived status. To challenge your position. If you react impulsively, you validate the attempt. If you remain composed, you neutralize it. Hierarchy is perception-based. Perception is influenced by composure. Composure influences hierarchy. So calm is not passive. It is structural dominance. Not dominance over others. Dominance over narrative. You refuse to let someone else dictate the emotional tone of the interaction. That refusal shifts power silently. And silent shifts are often more effective than loud ones. Now consider your past. Think of moments when you reacted emotionally to disrespect. What remained afterward? Temporary satisfaction perhaps. But often regret. Rumination. Mental replay. Imagine those same moments handled with composure. How different would the long-term outcome have been? This reflection strengthens commitment. Because you now see the cost of reactivity. And the benefit of discipline. Now we approach the ultimate level. Indifference to ego battles. When someone attempts to provoke you, and you truly do not feel compelled to engage, something profound happens. You feel light. You feel unburdened. You are no longer carrying the need to win every exchange. You conserve mental space. You conserve emotional clarity. And clarity compounds into better life decisions. Disrespect becomes background noise in a larger life. When your life is purpose-driven, small ego conflicts feel trivial. Purpose stabilizes emotion. Without purpose, minor insults feel enormous. So build something meaningful. When your attention is focused on growth, discipline, contribution, and improvement, disrespect feels like interruption rather than identity threat. And interruptions are handled calmly. Now let us compress the ultimate worldview. People act from their level of awareness. Some act from maturity. Some act from insecurity. Some act from fear. Some act from ego. Your job is not to correct everyone's level. Your job is to maintain yours. Maintenance of level is sovereignty. Sovereignty is peace. Peace is power. And power that does not need to prove itself is the strongest kind. This is the final consolidation. At the beginning, disrespect felt like a threat. It felt personal. It felt urgent. It felt like something that needed immediate correction. Now you understand something deeper. Disrespect is only powerful when it disrupts your internal structure. If your structure is stable, disrespect becomes friction, not damage. Friction can polish. Damage destroys. You decide which it becomes. Over the course of this transformation, you have moved through layers. From impulse to pause. From reaction to evaluation. From ego defense to strategic response. From emotional dependence to emotional sovereignty. From fragile pride to grounded confidence. Now everything compresses into one permanent internal stance. No one has direct access to my nervous system. No one controls my state without my permission. No comment overrides my identity. No tone dictates my reaction. I evaluate first. I respond proportionally. I disengage when necessary. I release when complete. This is your operating system. And once installed, it changes how you move through the world. You stop entering rooms seeking validation. You stop scanning constantly for threat. You stop overanalyzing every interaction afterward. Because you trust your discipline. Trust eliminates anxiety. Anxiety fuels reactivity. Remove anxiety, and reactivity fades. There will still be moments of tension. You are human. But the recovery time shortens. Seconds instead of hours. Minutes instead of days. You stabilize quickly. That speed of recovery is maturity. Maturity is attractive. Not in a superficial sense. In a gravitational sense. People feel grounded around you. They speak more carefully. They test less frequently. They adjust tone unconsciously. Because your presence communicates that emotional manipulation will not succeed. You have become steady. And steadiness is rare. Now let us address the final truth. You do not need to be respected by everyone. You need to respect yourself. Self-respect built on discipline, integrity, and composure is untouchable. It does not fluctuate with opinion. It does not collapse under criticism. It does not inflate under praise. It remains centered. When self-respect is internal, external disrespect loses leverage. It may still occur. But it does not penetrate. And when it does not penetrate, it cannot control. Control is the core. Not control over others. Control over response. Control over pacing. Control over tone. Control over interpretation. Control over engagement. Control over release. This is power in its cleanest form. You are no longer reactive. You are responsive. You are no longer urgent. You are deliberate. You are no longer defensive. You are measured. You are no longer easily provoked. You are anchored. Anchored individuals are not pushed easily. Storms may pass over them. But they do not drift. And eventually, you notice something subtle. Disrespect becomes less frequent. Not because the world changed. But because you did. You project stability. You project boundaries. You project self-containment. And most people instinctively respect stability. Even those who attempt to challenge it quickly realize that emotional access is denied. You remain calm. You remain clear. You remain centered. Always. This is not suppression. This is not coldness. This is disciplined composure. And disciplined composure is freedom. Freedom from ego wars. Freedom from impulsive regret. Freedom from emotional hijacking. Freedom to choose your battles. Freedom to focus on growth. Freedom to conserve energy for what matters. Freedom to move through life without being shaken by minor voices. When someone disrespects you now, the sequence is automatic. Pause. Breathe. Assess. Respond proportionally. Or disengage. Then release. No rumination. No lingering resentment. No emotional residue. Just clarity. Just control. Just sovereignty. And that sovereignty becomes your signature. Not loud. Not aggressive. Not performative. Quiet. Measured. Unshaken. You do not chase respect. You embody stability. And stability commands its own space. From this point forward, carry this code. My state is mine. My response is chosen. My standards are clear. My composure is protected. My peace is non-negotiable. And no external behavior overrides internal discipline. That is how you stay calm when people disrespect you. Not by suppressing emotion. Not by dominating others. But by mastering yourself. Always.